You ever wake up one day and realize you're the villain in someone else's HOA newsletter? Because believe me, I sure didn't see that coming. I didn't come out here to the Colorado mountains to start a turf war with people who think community standards is a personality trait. Nah, I was just looking for a slice of quiet, 40 acres of wild, wind-slapped pine, a battered fire tower, and the kind of freedom that makes your lungs hurt from all the clean air. Turns out, peace is a relative concept, especially when there's an HOA president lurking nearby with more power fantasies than sense. See, I just about finished fixing up the old place. Solar panels humming, rain barrels catching the melt, cameras tucked under the eaves not to spy. But, well, let's just say, after a decade in military intelligence, you learn that preparedness isn't paranoia. It's basic survival. I'd finally reached the point where the only noise I heard at night was the wind in the treetops. Until 2 days after I installed my last motion sensor, a black SUV appeared on my gravel drive, crawling up like it owned the joint. Out steps this guy, Elliot Brooks. He's pressed and polished to the point you'd think the air around him would snap if he moved too fast. Clipboard in hand, shoes shining like Judgment Day, doesn't even bother knocking. Just glides up to my porch, talking about community aesthetics, like he's announcing the end times. I took a long, slow sip of my coffee just to keep from laughing. Community aesthetics? I said, buddy, last I checked, the only thing up here with an opinion is the coyote that craps behind my woodshed. But Elliot, bless him, isn't thrown. He's got this script, see, and he's sticking to it. Cameras, antennas, visual landscape violations. I've apparently committed some sin against the holy order of Aspen Hollow Summit. He gives me 72 hours to comply, like I'm going to salute and fall in line. So, I point at the gate at the bottom of my drive and tell him he's free to use it. And that's where you might think the story would end, right? A little mountain standoff, a retreating clipboard, everyone moves on. But nah, people like Elliot, they don't just move on, they regroup. Next morning, I'm out checking the perimeter, old habit, and here comes a county patrol car. Deputies friendly enough, just here because someone wonder who called in a complaint about illegal surveillance equipment. So I show him around, spread out my property deeds like a winning poker hand. He checks the cameras, shrugs, and files it as a non-issue. Tells me quietly to expect more calls. And sure enough, not an hour later, up rolls the real boss, Karen Rivers. If you can imagine a haircut sharp enough to cut glass and a personality just as forgiving, you've got her. She steps out of a white SUV that costs more than my entire solar grid, calls my home a military compound, and launches into this speech about natural harmony and visual standards. I tell her, politely as I can muster, that her authority ends at my property line. Cameras stay. She looks at me like I just spit in her kombucha, says, "We'll see about that," and peels out, leaving a cloud of indignation and Chanel No. 5. Here's where things start getting fun, if you're the kind of person who enjoys paperwork and spite. Next morning, there's a letter on my windshield. Aspen Hollow Summit letterhead, all legal-sounding warnings about scenic integrity and threats of fines. I toss it in the burn barrel. Honestly, it was the only thing I burned that week that didn't smell like pine. But then, that afternoon, a drone buzzes the Treeline, sleek, black, high-tech. I fire a flare well over its head just to say, "Hey neighbor, I see you." Drone zips back home. I check my footage, trace the flight path, and yeah, it launched from inside Aspen Hollow. These folks aren't just nosy, they're escalating. So I call my lawyer, Rebecca Torres. She's got the kind of sharp mind you wish your enemies never met. She tells me to keep every letter, every second of footage. Matt, you're fine. If they keep this up, we'll file harassment and make their lives interesting. I like the sound of that. From here, it's an arms race. Another letter, hand-delivered by a volunteer who looks fresh out of a real estate catalog. More threats, more bluster. I snap a photo of him and the letter, close the door in his face. He stands there confused, like ignoring a HOA letter breaks some cosmic law. Pretty soon, the accusations get creative. My cabin roof's the wrong color. My tower dazzles hikers. I'm a public hazard. I think about putting up a neon sign. Not your business. At this point, it's not even annoying, it's a game. So I play back. Print out stills of their drone. Send copies to the HOA and sheriff. Polite little note. Unregistered aerial surveillance is illegal. This is your warning. The sheriff calls to say I can press charges if it happens again. Couple days later, Karen herself is lurking near my drive, snapping pictures of wildflowers or maybe just my military compound. I call out, maybe your people wouldn't feel so unsafe if they'd stop trespassing. She calls me hostile. I say, Karen, I'm being polite, compared to what I could be. But this isn't about security anymore. It's about control, and that's one thing I don't give up. Then one night, I'm rewiring a circuit when a camera goes offline, just dead. I grab my flashlight and thermal monocular and head out. There are fresh ATV tracks where there shouldn't be, 2 sets of footprints, and a torn bit of fabric on my fence. Somebody's gotten bold. Footage shows 2 figures, tools in hand, messing with my camera. Not close enough for faces, but close enough for intent. I call the sheriff. No positive ID, no charges. File a report, they say. Sure. So I double down. New thermal cams, floodlights, hidden trail cameras, every feed backed up to the cloud. If they try again, I'll have M. And then twist, 3 nights later, the intruders come back. This time, I catch them live. 2 people sneaking up to my tower, tools in hand. Even in infrared, I recognize the platinum bob. Karen. She brought one of her HOA stooges along, and together they're working the bolts on my antenna. I get on the radio to the sheriff, send coordinates, turn on the loudspeaker. Step away from the equipment. You're being recorded. Law enforcement is en route. Karen nearly falls over herself scrambling away. In 15 minutes, deputies are hauling them down the driveway, hands cuffed, Karen ranting about community rules that don't mean squat on my land. But if you think that's the end, you don't know HOAs. Next day, I get slapped with a countersuit. Harassment, illegal surveillance, threatening the visual harmony of the mountain. I nearly choke laughing. I call Rebecca, who snorts. They're desperate. We'll shred them. Now here's where life starts feeling like a bad courtroom drama, except nobody's winning an Emmy. I turn over every scrap of evidence, videos, drone paths, letters, audio logs. The sheriff attaches it all to Karen's charges. Meanwhile, I loop in a local news station and they run with the story, Mountain Man versus HOA, cameras, control, and chaos. People eat it up. Suddenly, I'm getting emails from Aspen Hollow residents. Most are sick of Karen's bullying, some even want to join my side. That's when the real twist walks up my porch. Tom, an old landowner, knocks on my door. Says he's not with the HOA. Hell, they tried to force him to join years ago. He tells me Karen's been strong-arming folks, faking violations, threatening lawsuits to get people to sign on or sell out. They call it maintaining standards, he says, but it's just a power grab. Suddenly it clicks. This isn't about my cameras. It's about power, money, and squeezing every last drop of control out of this valley. Rebecca gets busy. We file civil and criminal suits, trespassing, vandalism, defamation, harassment. She even loops in the FCC. My tower is federal infrastructure. Tamper with it, and you're in a whole new world of pain. The DA gets involved. Subpoenas fly. Turns out, Karen's been cooking the HOA books for years. Phony fees, intimidation, fines that never make it into official records. Homeowners come forward. One guy's been fined 3 times in a year for a non-compliant garage. Another couple paid for landscaping nobody ever did. When the day of reckoning comes, the Aspen County Courthouse is buzzing like a beehive. I'm in boots and flannel. Karen's in a blazer, white enough to blind the judge. Rebecca's surgical, laying out video, audio, letters, drone logs. Karen's lawyer tries to make me out as a paranoid survivalist. Some witness claims my cameras spiritually violated her. Rebecca asks her if she realizes she lives half a mile away with no line of sight. The woman turns crimson and sits down. Best part? We play audio of an HOA board member bragging about running the paranoid mountain guy out. The judge is livid. Ms. Rivers, do you realize the legal implications of orchestrating harassment? Karen tries to blame community standards, but it's over. Verdict comes in. HOA guilty of harassment, defamation, trespassing. Karen personally liable for property damage. Damages? $410,000. Enough to buy new cameras, a new fence, and maybe a year's worth of decent whiskey. Now, if you think people like Karen fade away quietly, you're dreaming. Even after the check arrives, hand-delivered by a courier who looks like he's delivering a ransom, I hear rumors. Karen's out, the HOA's board is under investigation, their bank accounts frozen. Aspen Hollow's empire is crumbling. Residents are talking about disbanding the HOA entirely. Some even drop by with coffee and thanks, telling me horror stories about Karen's reign. Fines for untrimmed bushes, threats over fence colors, even bullying a widow to sell her land. And here's the thing, the lesson, if you want to call it that. People talk about freedom like it's a flag or a slogan. But out here, I learned it's quieter, harder, messier than that. Freedom is keeping your head down and your paperwork up, refusing to be cowed, but also knowing when to ask for help and when to call in the cavalry. The real power isn't in winning fights. It's in making sure no one can take from you what you built with your own hands. I had a plaque made, hung it on my new gate. This land has no HOA and never will. The mountain is quiet again. Well, except for the odd deer and the birds at my feeder. No more letters, no more drones. Karen's house sits unsold. Nobody wants to live in the ruins of a failed dictatorship. But sometimes, in the stillness, I wonder, was it all worth it? What's the line between defending your home and starting a war? At what point does fighting back just make you another tyrant, another Karen, just on the other side of the fence? So, what do you think? Is there such a thing as going too far to protect your piece of earth? Have you ever stood your ground, or seen someone abuse a little too much power in the name of community? Drop your stories and your takes in the comments, because sometimes the only thing more satisfying than a hard-won victory is knowing you're not fighting alone.